one humble suggestion would be to take the axioms which Gordon referred to before, drawing from these great faith traditions and seeing them underpin new and emerging codes and sets of civic values which underpin the way in which we engage with one another in the future and as the new generation of young people assume positions of leadership.
There are thousands of schools in this country giving off their time to raise money for charity. Only a few weeks ago, Comic Relief, which people thought might not raise so much money this year because of the downturn, raised the greatest amount of money ever, involving more young people than ever, more schools, and I think we owe it to our young people to thank them for giving us this faith in the future. But why I'm also confident about the future is I went to Tanzania a year or two ago, and I went to this village where there were very, very few people. I was taken into this hut to meet someone who was suffering from AIDS. His sister was helping him. She wanted to be a doctor, but you knew perfectly well she had no chance ever of being a doctor, given the current poverty that they lived in. He could not have the money to get the bus to go to hospital to get the treatment that he needed. And he said to me as we were talking, he said, "Are we not all brothers?" And so the same moral sense guiding him, even in his abject despair, as guides so many people in this country. And I do believe there is a shared global ethic. I think the great thing that has happened over these last few years is that by being able to talk and communicate with other people in different continents, we've found that a lot of the barriers of prejudice and a lot of the barriers that led to division and indeed extreme division have broken down. And I believe that the young people of this world who are communicating with each other across these frontiers are actually changing the world by what they do. And I think we should encourage these contacts. Schools linked up to Africa, huge environmental campaigns run by very, very young children, a sense of belief in the future that in a way undermines the cynicism that we often find reflected in our national newspapers. So I believe that we should be far more confident about the future, confident because we have young people who genuinely want to change the world.
One example of that is the Twyford School who sang are in email contact with a school right at the heart of the capital of Mozambique, in Maputo. So that's a very lively example. A rather quizzical question now from one of the gathering. Economic growth is not what the UK and Australia needs, but gross domestic happiness. Do you agree?
If we could create that, Kevin.
Both Gordon and I are hoping to undertake a joint mission to Bhutan at any point which presents itself in the future. So much which has underpinned Gordon's remarks and my remarks go to this core values question, which is, I said, that this extreme version of the market, which has become something of the orthodoxy in the last quarter of a century, has become, the false god of our age, the golden calf. Whereas it's been the experience of the ages and the literature of the ages, and we discover it again in this age, that as people reflect on wealth, those who have it in extreme form, is it doesn't actually constitute happiness. That happiness actually lies, and human fulfillment, in the virtues which lie in the mainstream traditions of the great faiths who are represented here today. And I think a rediscovery of that through one important agency, given the impact of the current crisis, and that is the agency of family and community. This crisis in the United Kingdom and in Australia and other countries will cause many people to lose their jobs. There will be a discovery afresh on the part of those affected by that, but those who are their neighbours and their friends, of this extra call back to family and to community. And in that, the discovery afresh of old truths. The great truth of St. Francis, in giving that you receive and pardoning that you are pardoned. That is, that you only become fully human when you fully give. In a way, therefore, through this and through community action at the local level, supported by these extraordinary missionaries of hope, which Gordon referred to before, and the young people of the world, I think these deeper values of happiness and therefore well-being flow and will flow. And like Gordon, I'm enormously encouraged by these missionaries of hope right around the world, challenging the cynicism of those older than them, challenging them in their face, afresh and with vigour. I have in Australia a youth aid organisation where the mandatory retirement age is 25. And this bunch of young kids, they're out there, they're called Oak Tree. They're just recruiting kids right across the country, running their own aid projects in various parts of the developing world and in Africa without any support from any of the rest of us, which they don't want. These, I think, through their agency, are rediscovering values of happiness which come off an axiom which has been around for the ages: in giving that you receive.
Well, I think prosperity... I think prosperity must have a purpose beyond prosperity itself, and that wealth must, as I said, serve more than the needs of the wealthy. But I also think, there, as Kevin used these words, there is nothing ennobling about poverty. When you think of it, when you applauded the Millennium Development Goals and the need to achieve them, what we were really saying is that we cannot tolerate a situation in the world where there is extreme poverty. And all the Millennium Development Goals are about the necessary resources so that every child can be in education, so that every mother can have health care and have family too, so that everyone has the chance of escaping extreme poverty, and that we do so not at the expense of the environment, but by making the environment safer and more sustainable. And therefore we are setting out in the Millennium Development Goals aims that require us not to reject materialism in the sense that people have to go without when they are poor, but requiring us to take action to ensure that there is justice and fairness in the distribution of wealth all around the world. So I think we've got to balance off the need to pursue the noblest of aims that go beyond prosperity, with the need also to ensure that people are not denied the chance to fulfil the potential because of the threat of poverty. And I think that is something that we've got to bear in mind when we're debating the causes of this crisis. We have to ensure all the time that we respect the needs of the poor.
Now, bearing in mind a celebrated comment of recent times, the panelists are asked by one member of the gathering, is doing God important to developing our shared global values?
Maybe I should explain to Kevin the terms of that question.
Oh, Gordon, I understand that.